Today's guest is Cayson Renshaw. Out of Provo, Utah, Cayson is establishing himself in his local scene as a singer-songwriter to follow. Welcome, Cayson.
Hey
Thank you.
man, welcome to glad to have you here.
Thank you guys. Good to be here. This is
Yeah.
fun.
All right, let's start at the beginning. Where were you born and raised, and how did music first get introduced into your life?
So I was born in Walnut Creek, California, just outside of San Francisco, um, and then raised in a town not far from there called Antioch. Um, and music, I always listened to music growing up. My parents always listened to stuff in the car or in the house. There was always something
Yeah.
playing. But I didn't really kind of dive in until I was a freshman in high school, and um, I actually joined the a cappella choir at school, and
Mhm.
then I kind of picked up the guitar at the same time and piano a little bit. Most of those just kind of self-taught and by ear mostly,
Yeah.
um, and started writing songs, and that was kind of where it started. So,
What kind of music did your parents listen to when you were growing up?
oh, one of like the main names that comes to mind is James Taylor. He
Yeah.
was like a big one. Um, and then I can't even think of like other. My dad would listen to like some older like classic rock kind of stuff, Steve
Right.
Miller Band,
Yeah.
the Eagles, that kind of stuff. Um, but yeah, it was I don't know, all kinds of stuff. And then my older siblings, they would listen to stuff too, like whatever '90s. I don't even know.
Yeah, the 90s like
NSYNC,
rock.
Backstreet Boys,
Gotcha.
all that stuff. So
That's awesome. What were you listening to when you first like got into high school and started doing music? Like what were your influences at that time?
yeah, actually, one of my brothers, he kind of turned me on to Matt Carney. He
Oh
was
yeah.
kind of one of my big influences when I first started. And I've always been a big Coldplay fan, but especially like when I was first getting into music, that was actually one of the first songs I learned on the piano was one of their songs, Lost.
Oh, awesome.
Um, yeah, but those who else was? Oh, Jason Mraz also was kind of a big one when I was first starting. Those were probably like the three main people that I was listening to when I was starting to write and all that.
Do you think listening to them and wanting to be like them was a big reason why you picked up those instruments?
Probably. Um, I honestly a big part of the reason for me that I started um, doing music and writing music was just because I was actually like super shy as a kid, and I'm still not like the most outgoing person,
Yeah.
but I I think my parents they like quote one of my baseball coaches from back in the day who apparently asked if I even like knew how to talk because I was so shy.
Oh man.
But music kind of became the way that I found my voice, I guess, in a way, and um, it was just the easiest way that I had found to express myself. So
Yeah, totally get that. I can relate.
yeah.
So when you started playing instruments, were you instantly into the songwriting aspect, or were you kind of just doing covers for a while, or how'd that go?
Um, I definitely started learning some covers, but I mean, it was probably within the first year that I learned the guitar that I was writing songs for that same reason, just because I was bad at expressing myself with just words, and it
Yeah,
was easy to do when I was alone in my bedroom writing cheesy songs. So,
yeah, for sure. So do you gravitate more towards guitar than piano in the beginning, and even now? Like, how does that kind of go with you?
um, it really depends. I just got a piano from a thrift store like a few months ago,
Nice.
and so I've been writing a lot more on the piano. Um, I would say it's almost like 50-50 these days. But it was definitely mostly the guitar at the start.
Gotcha. That's sweet. How do you feel your old songs when you first started writing compared to your songs now? Like, how would you compare them? What's changed?
Um, that's interesting. I mean, I like to think that they've gotten better.
Yeah.
Uh, I think I've just kind of, I mean, doing it so much all these years, I think I've just gotten a little bit better at um, figuring out what I'm trying to say in a song and saying it in a way that is relatable to people, and not cheesy, I guess. I think
Yeah.
that was the biggest thing is when I remember or hear the songs that I wrote as a kid, it's like, wow, that is the cheesiest thing ever.
A little bit of cringe
But
sometimes. Yeah,
exactly.
I get that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So continue the story. So you started in high school.
Mhm.
What kind of bridge us from what happened then to where you are now? Like, what was your musical, not to be like cliche, but what was your journey from then to now?
Yeah. So I had like played sports all growing up. We're going back to the growing up for a second, but um, basically in high school was kind of when music took over the sports, and so I kind of dropped baseball and soccer, which I had played, and I kept doing choir all through high school. Um, and then I didn't really plan on pursuing it much after that, but I started school at BYU and I did a couple years and I like thought I was gonna do psychology or something, but um, I ended up taking this songwriting class that I liked a lot, and the professor was like, I guess he kind of turned into one of my mentors, and just was very like encouraging and like, hey, you're really good at this, and you should probably try to pursue this.
Awesome.
Um, so it was that class that kind of introduced me to this program that I ended up studying, commercial music at BYU. Um, and then from there, I was like, well, I guess if this is what I'm doing, then I better dive in. So um, tried to just start doing as much as I could in and outside of school. So
Yeah, that's awesome. So when you were first starting in your local scene, like to really be involved in like, did you start playing live shows at some point?
yeah, it took me a while to get there. Um, I mean, I played at like random little acoustic things just by myself. But it took a couple years before I kind of got a band together and um, started doing some shows, um, which was a ton of fun. But it kind of got to this point where I felt like I wanted to focus more on the recording side of things, and so I kind of stepped back from the, I guess, performing thing and tried to really focus on recording and getting more music out for people to hear.
Yeah, and is that where you're still at now? Like you're more still in the recording aspect of music?
Yeah, I have been trying to do, actually, me and my buddy Garen, who I think you guys interviewed
Yeah,
a couple
he's a
days
pretty good.
ago. We've been doing these little house shows just at his house where we'll have a few people come, and um, it's been a lot of fun to they're just kind of intimate and super low key little shows. Um, but yeah, I definitely am still trying to focus on just kind of building a catalog of music that I'm releasing. So that's where I'm at right now.
Gotcha. So, how do you feel about like in terms of writing music? Do you like to write by yourself a lot of the time, or do you like to collaborate with people? How has that kind of gone for you?
Yeah, um it's definitely easier to write on my own sometimes just because co-writing there's like different opinions or different, like, people hear different things or think a song should go a different direction. Um, so it does get a little tricky, but just in the past year, really, I've tried to do a lot more co-writing with people, um, because I think it helps to to also kind of take me out of my comfort zone and be exposed to more new things, and things that I am not as familiar with. So
Yeah, absolutely. What's it been like for you trying to build those connections? Like, I mean, because when you first start in the scene, I mean, most people, they have nothing to go from. You know, you don't know many people, you don't know the venues, you don't know the musicians. What's really helped you to build these connections so you can have these kind of co-writing networks or places to play live shows? What advice would you give to other people who are trying to get to that stage?
yeah, I will say school was a huge help for me. Um, I feel like people say that all the time, but that was probably the one of the biggest takeaways I got from my program was just some of the people I met. One of the guys that I played with in the band that I put together, he was in my program, and
Okay.
Gary and I met through the program, and me and him are together at least once, if not twice a week, writing or recording or doing these little shows that we're doing.
Yeah.
Um, but I honestly think that just doing as much as you can wherever you're at is the way to go. Like, uh, you definitely don't have to study music in school to meet other musicians. Um, and I think if you're putting yourself where you want to be and like where you're passionate, then you're gonna find other people that are kind of in the same realm as you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I want to ask more about that. Going to school for music. You said you're in commercial music, right? That's what you're studying.
Yeah, I actually just graduated last April.
Oh, congrats. That's
So
awesome.
thank you.
So, what was your experience with going to school for music like? Do you feel like it was, I wouldn't say essential, but necessary for what you want to do with music? Like, would you advise other people to take that path, or kind of what are your thoughts on it?
That's a really interesting one. Um, I think for me it was the right move because I I definitely I mean I mentioned that professor that I had that kind of gave me a little more confidence in myself, and I think that was huge for me having mentors like that that I was able to kind of get positive feedback from, um, and I also was really lucky to have a job where I was doing like audio stuff. It wasn't necessarily music related, but it was this job on campus where I was doing like audio editing and mixing for TV,
Oh,
working
gotcha.
in the same software that I do music in. So um, having that paired with the the people I met in school and the kind of the confidence that I gained from being in school, uh, I think I absolutely wouldn't be where I'm at without that. Um, but I know tons of people who are already kind of have that confidence and know what steps they need to take to progress, and so it's I think it really just depends who you are, but
Gotcha. Yeah, it sounds like you wouldn't really say it's essential, but it can definitely be a useful tool.
yeah, absolutely.
Gotcha. Good to know. All right, so you released a song recently called "I Know You." Tell
True.
us more about that single, kind of like what it means to you and what the process of writing and recording it was.
Yeah, so I actually started writing that on a trip with I don't know if you know who Adam Turley is.
I've heard of it.
Um,
It rings a bell.
he actually just moved out of Utah, but he's been in Utah for a while. He's kind of like a pop artist and producer.
Nice.
Um, but he put together this little songwriting trip. There were like 10 of us that went to Colorado and stayed in a cabin last summer. Um, and that was where I started writing this song, I Know You. Uh, and it was like it was the last day of the trip, and I literally set up my little recording rig in this laundry room because it was the only place that wasn't available or
Oh,
that wasn't like taken already.
yeah.
Um, and I like recorded this little thing on my electric guitar and then sang a couple vocals, and Um, I I actually was kind of thinking about my relationship with God as I wrote the song.
Yeah.
Um, and the whole song is just kind of this idea of like kind of talking about my insecurities or struggles kind of, but knowing that uh that there is a God that like understands me and knows me better than anybody else does. Even when it's kind of hard to feel that or believe it.
Yeah.
Um, but after I wrote it, I realized that that can kind of relate to other relationships where like there are a lot of people that um, are just kind of there for us no matter what. And yeah, that's kind of the story behind the song.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think a lot of people would be able to relate to that. So that's really cool.
I hope so. I hope so.
Yeah. So, how long ago did you start writing that?
So I started it last July was the when we were on that trip, and actually I finished writing it there like in a couple days.
Yeah.
But then I was working on the production for kind of on and off. I would visit it like come back and revisit it every few weeks or so and add a couple things or take things out. So
Awesome. Yeah, it's interesting to hear about like the process of certain songs. Because some songs, they sit there for like 4 years before someone actually gets
right.
around. They finish
Yep.
it in 2 weeks. So I like hearing about it, how like some songs just come out super quick and some it
Yeah.
takes. That's interesting.
hmm
So, what are your goals with music going forward, like short term and long term?
Yeah. Short term right now is so I've released 2 singles the last couple months, and those will be part of this EP that I'll release in the next couple months. Um, and the goal with that is just kind of I don't have a ton of music out still right now, and the short term goal is just to kind of try to build more of a portfolio, so to say,
Yeah.
or a catalog, um, just to kind of have a little more under my belt, to, I don't know, show people and to build off of, I guess.
Do you see yourself
Um,
as continuing to release singles, or do you want to release an EP slash or an LP at some point too?
Definitely. So these singles will be part of an EP, and I that's probably the next step after the EP is to do an LP.
Gotcha.
Um, hopefully in the next year or something. I have like literally dozens of songs that are finished, dozens that I finished writing, and then several that I've already recorded demos for that I
Oh,
just
nice.
kind of need to finish. So
Yeah.
there are plenty of songs to be a part of an album
Yeah.
in the near future.
Awesome. And yeah, what about long term goals?
Um, I mean, eventually it would be really awesome to just be able to make enough money um, as an artist doing like just from streaming and then whatever performances here and there, and merch, I guess, ends up being a big thing. Um, but I basically for the past year, ever since graduation, I've just been doing um, a bunch of freelance work, both in audio, like I was doing at that job at school, and then I've also been doing some production for different artists. And this is my ghetto little recording studio here
Oh,
behind me.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I've been just doing random projects here and there. So um, I do enjoy like the producer world. I have a lot to learn in that realm, but um, that's I mean, if the rest of my life was being a producer and artist, I think I would be pretty happy with that. So
Awesome. Yeah, that'd be great. So something we like to ask here, because we understand that as artists start out, they go through really hard times, and I think sometimes I feel like kind of alone in those. Is what's a hard time you had to go through as an artist, especially, that you're grateful in hindsight you did have to go through?
Hmm. That is interesting. I I think I'm pretty lucky in the sense that I haven't been through like anything super terrible.
Yeah,
Um, but even though that is the case, I still like, I don't know, some days just kind of suck sometimes.
yeah,
Um, and I have a handful just over the last few years, like family and friends, handful of family and friends who have gone through stuff, and for whatever reason, I end up like feeling really deeply for them, and I I don't want to say that like those are my hard times, are their hard times,
yeah, for sure.
but it does get to you sometimes when like the people that you care about go through stuff, and um, yeah, I don't know. I feel like that's kind of a lame answer,
No,
but
no, that's great.
I I've been overall I've been pretty lucky. So
That's good. I mean, yeah, and it is good to hear like the people who don't always have such rough times, because some artists, you hear about them going through the pits, and other artists,
right.
they get by just fine, just taking care of one step at a time. So that's a great view to have.
Yeah, yeah, and that's I've I mean, obviously where I'm at is not like where I want to be in the end,
Yeah,
but I have been trying to keep the mindset of like I'm I'm writing and recording my music, I'm helping other people with their music, and um in a sense it's where I want to be. So um I definitely want to be able to make a little bit more steady income eventually, but um I've just tried to keep in mind that like I'm kind of living my dream to a small extent right now. So,
yeah, for sure. It's awesome. So when you're the people close who are close to you, around you, go through hard times, do you feel that affects your music in any ways?
yeah, a lot. um, I feel like those times tend to influence the songs or inspire a lot of the songs that I write um, in a big way. Yeah,
Awesome. Do you ever write songs for people, or is it kind of just I don't know, a different sense?
yeah, I kind of. I don't like. I don't know. It's hard to explain. I don't like say I don't usually sit down and say like, "Oh, this song is for Elizabeth," you know?
Yeah,
I
for
don't know
sure.
who Elizabeth is.
Yeah,
But it's usually just kind of like I'll sit down at the piano or sit down with a guitar, and um something will come out and I'll be like, "Oh yeah, that makes sense why that came out because
yeah.
of this
It just kind of
situation or
links
whatever."
to it somehow. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting how it kind of happens, but
totally get that. So, what's something that's coming up that you're excited for?
um it's interesting because I like it feels good to get this music out that I've been releasing and that I am releasing.
Yeah,
But it's like a part of me doesn't want to get too excited because I know that it's just kind of a small step,
yeah,
and um maybe I should change my perspective, but like I said, my goal with this music that I'm releasing like in the coming months is just kind of to build a portfolio. I'm not like expecting to break any like I don't know, like get on the top 40 or anything like that.
yeah. You're just
I'm
building a
definitely
foundation.
not.
Yeah,
Yeah. So it's like it feels good and it is exciting in a sense to like get this music out. Um but uh I don't know. I'm just excited to keep working on music. Uh there are actually Garen was here today working on a song that me and him are doing a little collaboration on.
Awesome.
And yeah, I have a couple other projects and songs with people that are kind of coming down the pipeline. So I am excited about those. I try not to like have too high of expectations of like, oh, this is gonna go viral kind of
Yeah, it's
thing,
gonna
you know?
blow up, you know. Yeah.